So I think we're going to get started because we have a lovely audience here. And there's a few things that we're going to get to know ARIE and particularly the Makerspace today. So I'm going to give an overview of the space, and I'm going to give an overview of the Applied Research Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center. If there's anyone who has questions today, we'll absolutely be happy to answer them a little bit later. There's a few things just to go over as housekeeping before we get too deep into it. So today is basically we are going to have just a couple things, which is we ask that you please keep your microphone muted and throughout the presentation. But again, if you want to ask questions, you absolutely can. You can use the chat button, and if you do want to, we can ask you to unmute yourself. The session is being recorded, so just so you know, we have a recording of this session and we will be sharing it later. Questions come at the end, but I'm pretty open, so if you would like to, you can ask a question throughout the event if you would like to. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the presentation here, and I'm going to share my screen with all of you. All right, so just let me know, give me a thumbs up if you can see the PowerPoint. Awesome, thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. And we have, nice, all the thumbs up. So again, like I said, we're the Office of Applied Research, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship. It's a little bit of a mouthful, so we do like to refer to it as ARIE sometimes in the acronym form, ARIE. What we do there is there's a lot going on. So there's the applied research aspect, there's the innovation aspect, and the entrepreneurship aspect. I am the marketing manager for the Applied Research Office and as well as Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And so here I am to tell you a little bit about it. If my computer will go to the next slide, perfect. So like I said, there's a lot going on in ARIE, and it's based on a whole bunch of different centers. In general, the applied research portion of our center is that we partner with SMEs, so small medium enterprises. We partner with large companies like IBM or Adobe, and we provide research opportunities through those companies for students to work with them directly, either in class projects or through paid assignments, where they will create new products, services, all kinds of fun things. I have a few examples, and as I go through these centers, I'll share a few of them with you. So as you can see, it kind of runs the gamut. There's applied engineering, there's construction research, there's data analytics, design, innovation, entrepreneurship for sure. Perth Campus, which highlights some heritage carpentry and how that deals with technology. So that's a pretty interesting one. The Social Innovation Lab works with not-for-profits, and the Makerspace, which we'll get into a little bit deeper later, because that's where both me and Stephen work and like to spend a lot of our time when we can be on campus. And then the Waterfront campus, which focuses on environmental research. So I'll give you a couple examples because it is a hard definition to sort of grasp without really just kind of having a good example. So in applied engineering, there's focus on new forms of engineering capabilities. So if that's working with 5G technologies, there's a project with TELUS where they worked with repeaters and getting stronger Wi-Fi signal applied. There is a project called the PEX Water Project, which is, if you know, your typical plumbing is made of copper, and we've been doing that for a very, very long time using the copper, and they're trying to see if there's a better way or an easier way that increases installation time, that adds for longevity, that helps with water flow, and they test all of these things, and it's all done with students doing all of the legwork and getting real experience in their fields before maybe they leave the college and go on to work for businesses. And oftentimes the students will go and work with those businesses as well. The Construction Research Center, they focus a lot on building information modeling. One of the coolest projects we have going right now with them is that they have this very, very expensive tool called a LiDAR scanner. And what that does is it shoots tons of laser points and can measure the real world to within millimeters of accuracy. And so we've been doing scans of NCC buildings, the Museum of Nature, We've done a scan to digitize almost every building in the college as well, which is very cool. And so all of this, the students get their hands on this, expensive piece of technology that they might not even get to use in their classroom. And we provide that resource so that this, students are able to experience what it's like to use that technology and put it in their hands and really get to it, not just read about it, but really, get the experience that they want and that the employer might ask for in the future. Data analytics is super exciting. They do tons of fun stuff. Things like creating, what was the most interesting one, I think, as of late was drone entry. They made they made a physical rocket that would take off and it would shoot a net, identify a drone in the air and shoot a net at it and take it down without using AI, and take it down without damaging it. So that's something really important in spaces near the airport where they don't want people to cause dangerous scenarios with a drone, for example, but they also don't want to have explosives or other things that are going to maybe affect the takeoff landing of planes. So this is a really interesting thing, and it's all designed by students who have come to the college, and now it's being launched and sold to companies like D&D, for example. The Design Center, they have Masterpiece VR, which is a fantastic, well, they help make websites, they help make online stores, all kinds of different things, but a really cool one that has gone on for about 5 years now is Masterpiece VR. That piece of software, it's a piece of software for VR that allows anyone to jump in and start modeling digital material like you would a piece of clay. So imagine if you were just modeling a piece of clay in front of you, you can do that within VR using this tool. It was 100% made by Algonquin College students, and it's now available on Steam for download. So if you got a Quest 2 for Christmas and you're looking for something to do, check out the Masterpiece VR on Steam and you can have a lot of fun. I will show you later, actually, some of those objects are 3D printable after the fact. So you can take something, design it in VR, and then have it exported to the real world, for example. Innovation and entrepreneurship, it's a little bit of a catch-all, but basically any student at the college has opportunities through there to start their business, to find out what it's like to start a business. If you don't have an idea, you can go there and sort of try to figure out what kind of business you'd like to start. But if you're interested, there's a whole host of resources to create a business plan, make a Shopify store, all kinds of cool stuff. Including mentorship, which is an important aspect if you are starting a business, because it allows you to learn from people who have done it before and help you to grow your business and scale quickly, which is a big important thing to do when you're starting a business. So there's all that opportunity there as well. The Perth Campus, again, it's heritage carpentry. So think kind of what the Construction Research Center is doing, but really focused on heritage buildings. One of the coolest projects I've seen coming out of Perth Campus was someone bought I think it's about 150-year-old stone building, and they actually they liked the building, but they didn't like the location. So what they decided to do was create a virtual scan, annotate every single brick in the building, every single block and stone, and then picked it all up, took it all down, picked it all up and put it somewhere else. And now they're rebuilding the building in a new location, which is crazy to me that someone wanted to do that. But they said, I love this building and I don't want it to get taken down, so I'm going to move it to somewhere useful to me. And it's just really cool that that's even possible. Social Innovation does a lot of app design. They create campaigns for people like the SENS Foundation, for example, that was aired on television. And this is all students. I have to reiterate that all of this work is being done by students and helped and mentored by industry professionals. And so they've created those campaigns, they created applications, websites, all kinds of stuff. But again, it's all for not-for-profit. So if you have some skills and you want to give them to people that need support in creating getting the word out and raising money for an important cause, this Social Innovation Lab is an amazing place to go. And you can really let loose. It's a really great creative space. I love it. So the Makerspace is sort of my and Steven's the thing that we really care about, that we have as a sort of side hustle, using entrepreneurship speak within our own jobs. We have a space where there's 3D printers and VR laser cutter, all kinds of different stuff. And I'll get into that a little later in some of the deep dive into what we do here. I have some props down by the side, and I can bring you guys to the space actually. And the Water Farm campus, last but not least, obviously, they focus on environmental studies. They're really interesting one that they have right now is well, there's two. One is they've planted over 5,000 trees next to a water's edge to see how it affects the actual quality of the water. So not only are they, sort of planting trees and helping with the air quality, but they're hoping that the roots will actually help to sort of start a filtration process with the water, which is very interesting. And they take measurements, check back, see how it's doing, and they plant more trees. Another one that they're doing is they grow algae in that same body of water that I talked about that they grow blue algae on a 3D printed scaffolding. So they 3D print the scaffold and then they grow some algae on it. And then they're able to harvest that algae and turn it into biodiesel, meaning they are growing energy and fuel, which is an amazing and incredible concept. And I really do hope they're successful in that, because we all know that, fossil fuels is not something that's sustainable, but if we could grow our own fuels, that would definitely be something really awesome and really great. So all of those things, just to encapsulate it all, every one of those projects is an applied research project, other than maybe the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center, which is a specific center focused on entrepreneurship. And that in its entirety sort of speaks to what ARIE does as a whole. For students though, there are probably two buckets which most of it sort of fits in, which is mentorship. You gain a lot of mentorship, the ability to work with an industry partner, someone who works in the field and puts your skills that you're learning in the classroom to use and talk with them about it, is a really great form of mentorship that helps you to grow, I would say, faster than normal. And then the second part is that you can get direct mentorship if you're looking to be an entrepreneur. So for students, getting mentorship, I would say, for me personally, having a mentor is one of the greatest ways to build yourself up, I would say, quicker, to learn the things you need to know faster so that you can do more with your skills. So always for anyone, I would say, even if it's not an applied research mentor, I would say get a mentor, because it's really a fun and exciting thing to do, and have somebody who can talk to about these things, who's done things before that you may want to do. Then for workshops, we have a whole host of workshops, and the point of those workshops is to sort of open the horizons of what is possible, what you can do, and the skills that you learn. So at the college, you're there to learn one thing or another particularly, but sometimes there's actually something you want to learn that's maybe not taught in your classroom, and our workshops are designed to sort of show you some other skills like 3D printing, how to 3D model, starting a Shopify store, building a Shopify store, creating a business plan. Yes, that might be taught in your class if you're in in the BME program where Stephen teaches as well. But if you're taking cabinet making, you might not be taught how to start your own business. And so you may want to use some of those resources and take some of those workshops to bolster what you're already learning in the classroom. I'll go through that a little bit in more detail and show you guys some of the workshops that we have and where you can register for them. So encapsulating all of that, because what's really important is, what you and what ARIE can do together as students. And all of them stem around giving new opportunities, expanding horizons for students, and giving them outlets for what they want to do in terms of their passions and their skills and talents, and the things that they know and the things that they're learning. So research assistant positions are through applied research, and you can get paid position and work to work for a different company. And those are amazing opportunities. I would say some of the greatest instances of me seeing people get jobs immediately once they graduate is with a research assistant position. I know a whole bunch of people who actually graduated with me who work in different companies around Ottawa and startups and all over because they worked as a research assistant. So it's a really cool opportunity if you can find a spot that fits for you and apply. All of the jobs that we would be having are all available on our social media. Every time there's a new job posting, it goes on our website, it goes on our socials. So it's a really good spot to follow us, and I'll show you those social handles later as part of the presentation. Mentorship for entrepreneurs, again, I can't speak to it sort of loudly enough, is this mentorship piece really does help you grow. Like, learning is one thing, talking to someone who's done it before is so important when you're trying to do something. So I have a real short story about mentorship and something that I learned, which is I started a business when I was attending Algonquin College long enough ago. I don't want to, call myself out in terms of how old I am, but long enough ago, almost 10 years ago now, I started my own business and I was doing really well. I didn't have to have another job while I was attending school other than the one I made for myself, which was awesome, and such a freeing feeling to be able to say, I'm supporting myself in my own business as I go to school and learn. But when I decided to stop, basically doing that, when I graduated, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go all in on being a cabinet maker and I'm not going to do my side business for the moment, I just shut it down. And the minute I actually talked to one of the mentors later, like years and years later, he said, have you ever started a business? I said, yeah. And then, but I don't run it anymore. He's like, oh, who runs it for you? What do you do with it now? And I said, oh, I just shut it down. He's like, what? You had a business, it was profitable, you had clients, you had contacts, you had all of this stuff, and you decided to just put it in a box and leave it to the side of the road? Like, that was worth money. What are you doing? So, this example for me, I would be perhaps a more successful individual than I currently am now, which is, not that big a deal, but I would have been able to make a little bit of money off that, because also there was only one competitor for my business in the entire Ottawa area. So 100%, I had I had the client that I wanted to sell it to locked in. I could have just said, hey, do you want all of these things I've built? Here, name your price, and there we go. So something as a real example of how mentorship can help. And so you don't make the same mistakes that I did, let's say. Access to technology. We're going to show you a little bit of that technology and what it can do in a minute or two. But 3D printers, laser cutters, VR, all of that exciting stuff. It's very close to my heart, and we're going to talk about it later. But as a Algonquin student and even a community member, you can access these things even in a virtual scenario. So you don't have to think that you have to wait till the college opens up again to do some of these things. VR in particular, yes, maybe, but laser cutting and 3D printing, no, because we have a solution for you. Workshops, again, those are virtual workshops now. They're not in-person workshops at the time being. So we have a whole host of them, and I'll show you them to you later. And then access to specialized software and training. So sometimes in your programs, just your Algonquin College email will get you free trials and access to pieces of software that you might not run into along your typical journey. There's Amazon Web Services. We are partners through the Data Analytics Center, and you can get free access to Amazon Web Services as a student of Algonquin College with your email. You can just let us know that you want it, and we can help you do that too. There's things like Fusion 360. Just by having a Algonquin College or student email address, you can access Fusion 360 for a full year, which is an awesome 3D modeling piece of software. And then there's all kinds of trainings that we can help you get into. But basically, just know that there are other opportunities for maybe software that you're not being shown in your classroom and things that you can jump on. Resolve is free for everyone, and that's a video editing software, DaVinci Resolve, and just sometimes people don't know that. So there's a couple others, but I won't rattle them all off. But if you want to find out about some of those things, you can visit our website, connect with us on social media, and stay tuned for all the upcoming job opportunities. Just before we get into the Makerspace a little bit more deeply, I want to showcase that we have this thing called reaction, and it turns research into action. That's the whole name and the meaning behind it. And what it is a great way to really understand what applied research and our office does. It's the 1 day or 3 days of the year, where 1 day of each semester, where we put all of the research that's being done and all of the cool projects, even some of them from the Makerspace and Entrepreneurship, are participating in a large virtual showcase. We typically have Well, in the past, at our last virtual showcase, we had 250 people, which was great. And in the past, when they're live events, we've had up to 700 people at a single event. This is industry partners, this is government relations people. And the best part about it is that you get to see all the amazing work that students at the college do. So if you're a student there and you're either interested in taking another program, or you're just kind of interested in seeing what other people at the college are doing and students are doing, it's more than a description of what a program does. It's really what they accomplished that year. It's a window into, what they learned and the skills that they have in those different programs. You also get to engage with industry professionals. And of course, it has the exciting aspect of being an awards show where you get pitches and there's a winner announced at the end. And that's always fun and exciting to see. So I really do hope people will sign up there. Our next one is going to be in the beginning of April. So keep tuned on our social channels for that. Thanks. This is the presentation thus far, and you can contact me at jerabem@algonquincollege.com, or you can follow us on social handles, which are on the side here. We're also on Facebook, so you can check it out there. Website's at the bottom. So there's plenty of opportunity to get involved, and I really hope that you will as a group. So I'm going to stop sharing that portion of my screen, and I'm going to jump in and show you guys a little bit about the Makerspace, because we've talked a lot about ARIE as a whole in our office, and there's a ton of opportunities there. But again, like I said, me and Stephen really, really do enjoy sharing the Makerspace and all the awesome opportunities it brings to basically students. It brings actually students and community members and everyone together around ideas. And so I think that is really one of the most important parts about the space, is that you don't have to be a student at the college to undertake or get involved in the Makerspace, take any of the workshops, any of that. And that's by design. We want community members to interact with students. We want everyone to, sort of participate in projects and support each other, regardless of, their background or where they're from. So the diversity is key in the Makerspace. So I'm going to share my screen and bring you guys to the website quickly. Or maybe not so quickly, but I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. All right, so here it is. Here's our landing page. This is where you're going to go if you want to get involved in the Makerspace. These are some lovely people that are my friends and that I care about deeply that are on the page here. And I hope, that if you come to the space, we can forge that same kind of relationship, because it's really a great one. When you do things together, it really does build some really great relationships and friends. We have technicians in the space that are willing to help you. So Stephen is one of those, and we have 2 other technicians that are there to support your project. So really clearly about the Makerspace is it's access to technology, but it is assisted access, meaning we don't just say, oh, you want to 3D print something? Cool. Here you go. Here's a piece of software. Go do it. We actually support you. You can book a session with us to talk about it. If you have no idea how to even get started and you're just like, I would like to 3D print a thing. I don't know how to do that, or where I would start, or even, who to talk to. Well, the first step now, which is who to talk to. And that is us right here. So, but the way to do that, the best way to do that, because you can send me a personal email and that's totally fine. And I'll get it figured out for you. But if you book a consultation, so right here in our virtual services, and it's important that they're virtual now, so we're not going to meet you, or you're not going to come to the Makerspace just yet, but you can request a meeting. So you can click on here and it will eventually load. As Stephen has pointed out, my internet is rather slow, so we're working on that. And we have virtual service requests. So all you need to do is put in your name, your last name, your email, and you can let us know who you are, if you're a student, college alumni, employer, community member, any of those things. You can say, I would like to help with, so specifically the language, I want help with something, or I want to engage an idea, something else. So there's 3D printing, there's laser cutting, there's electronics, but there's also something else. Meaning we love that idea of surprise us, ask us something that we maybe don't know how to do. We love challenges and awesome things like that. So if you don't know how to do it, you ask us and we don't know, we're going to find out how to do it. We've never failed yet. I can proudly say we have not failed to help somebody with their idea at this point. Almost 3 years in, we no matter what, we get the job done. We'll help you conquer your idea, for lack of a better term, let's say. And you can drop a file if you have a sketch of your idea from your notebook or anything. You can take a photo and you can drop it in, just so we have some background, and that goes to everyone. The reason it's the best way to get in contact is because to all the technicians, myself, and Steven, so we can all take a look at it and see who best could support your endeavor. So I did say that we have some different technologies in the space. Right here, you can actually see an image of a 3D printer going, some of the file in the background. And one thing that's really cool to note, and before I get into sort of the actual objects that I have behind me, I'll just point out that there's some really cool stuff that you can do that I wish people had told me when I was maybe a younger student, concerning mathematics, and how you might want to get involved in those, because they can help you do creative things and not just, calculate how much tax you're going to pay on your groceries and things like that, because that to me was not that enticing when I was younger. But I often like to point this out, because what that is a sine wave. So if you remember high school mathematics and you were learning about sine and cosine and tangent and all that stuff, that's actually a very cool vase that you can, put flowers in, that was designed around the beauty that is a sine wave. So if you hold it sideways, it's actually modeled after a sine wave, and cubes have been added along the way. So I don't know. For me, that speaks to me in a way that I would have said I might have been more interested in mathematics and actually paying attention in class when I was younger. I do it now, but when I was younger, if I'd sort of been shown these amazing things. And of course, right now I can't hand it through the screen to you, but it is a really cool thing to hold a sine wave. It just feels really interesting. So when we get back to it, I would invite any of you to come hang out. We still do have that model in the space, I believe. So I'm just going to go back to our main page here. There's a couple other things we can sort of navigate through as we go. And the other one is the workshops. And so I did say that we host a bunch of different workshops. Really, really important is that you should never feel intimidated to go to a workshop. Going to a workshop is saying, I'm curious about this topic. It is not saying you don't have to have any experience, zero experience required in any of these workshops, which is really, really important. We always want to make sure that it's open to everyone. And if you are interested in learning about it, we can help you get there. So I'm going to show a little bit of them so that if you would like to, you can visit this page later and sign up for any of them. They range, right now we have Intro to Python, part 1, 2, and 3. These have already happened, but luckily for you guys, we have a watch online on our YouTube channel. So that's a great example of we've held it. We're going to hold more, but in the meantime, if you can't wait until our next workshop, you can watch it online and you can start to follow along. The best part is if you do some of those and you get stuck, we have that virtual service request. You send us a note and we can help you with wherever you got stuck in. I know that happens when I'm watching YouTube tutorials sometimes. A button will disappear on me that is clearly in front of the person that is teaching you, and you can't reach through or ask the person on the video, hey, why isn't it there for me? So that's the nice part about doing it as part of a workshop. You can ask to share your screen, and the person hosting the session can sort of help you and walk you through it. Same thing for 3D design basics. Well, that one's going to be live. I'm going to be actually the host for that one. I've asked, and a cool note about it is that I am not, I would say, a consummate professional in 3D design. I know a little bit about it. I would say I'm an intermediate. We do have people who are better than me at 3D design by far in our space, but I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could show beginners how to do something, which is a mantra that we like to hold in the Makerspace. Stephen, maybe I'll throw it to you to jump in a bit and tell the story perhaps about the time when I asked you to start this Arduino workshop that I'm talking about right here.
Sure. So a few years ago, we bought a whole bunch of Arduino kits thinking that we'd do something with these eventually. That Matt decided earlier last year, I think in 2019 actually, in early 2019, that we were going to start doing regular workshops. And he wanted somebody to teach the Arduino workshop. I've been coding since I was 6. I've been doing electronics all the way through high school, but I'd actually never touched an Arduino before, other than taking them out of the box and putting them on the shelf. So Matt asked if I'd be interested in putting a workshop together. And I said, yeah, no problem. When am I teaching this? His answer was in 3 days. So I got to spend my lunch hour and some of my time at work learning how to put an Arduino kit together, learned a project, and then had to teach it 3 days later. But then from there, it turned out that it was such an enjoyable and relatively easy thing to do that we ended up teaching that workshop month after month after month until we finally went remote. And I figured, well, let's see where else we can go with this. Matt challenged me to come up with a curriculum, and it ended up turning into a 4-part project, which is now taught entirely remotely. So we've always believed, both myself and Matt, that the best way to learn something is to try to teach it. But this was the first time that I actually had to put that philosophy into practice, and it turned out to have worked pretty well, actually.
Yeah. Stephen is humble, and so he won't tell this part of the story, but at the end of that first session, so 3 days previous, he had never touched an Arduino. On the Friday, he taught it to a class of, I think there was 35 people there, which was awesome. And at the end of it, I pulled the room and I said, hey, how long does everyone think Stephen's been doing this for? And they all, literally, people put up their hands, 5 years, 10 years. He's so good at this. Oh my goodness, it must have taken him forever to learn how to do this. And I went, guess what? He started 3 days ago. And everyone, no, I don't believe you. It couldn't possibly be true. And so the best part about it is that, it seems so daunting when you want to start something new like this. Like, oh my goodness, Arduino sounds so complicated. People build robots with Arduino. I'm like, yep. But if you're willing to try and you want to take a stab at it, you can really go far very quickly, especially when you have help. Stephen didn't even have any help. So imagine if he didn't have a Stephen to help him along on the journey, right? Now you have Stephen to help you walk through not only that process of learning, but the process of learning it that quickly. And the best part that I like about sort of having somebody who's not so good at it that they forget what it was like when they started learning it, teaching you, is that, well, supporting your learning, is that they're going to know, oh, I remember when I didn't know exactly how to do that thing. They remember what it was like to be fresh. And so they can give you that fresh perspective very clearly and accurately. And so that's why I think I'm going to jump on the 3D design and sort of help promote the knowledge that way. And I get better as I help other people learn. It ingrains into my brain in maybe a different way, and engages some different synapses, let's say. So I get stronger, you guys get stronger. It's perfect. And Stephen's there. That's why I keep challenging him to do more. He doesn't give the same one every time. He's constantly, making a different one. Right now he's working on one for We Saved You a Seat, which is a women in STEM, basically a program where there's a couple different people sponsored by IBM. We get a cohort of college students, a cohort of younger, I think it's grade 7 to grade 10 students, and they match them up and become mentors. And we're going to help them learn a little bit of Arduino because, well, why not? It's fun. Stephen gets to make a new program so that you can print that one. That's a little bit like this session, but it goes very deeply into the difference between 3D printing, laser cutting, and why, if you were going to undertake one of those things, you might do one or the other, and how to identify objects, because you can, and I guarantee you could find at least a laser cut thing in any of your houses, because laser cutting is more ubiquitous than you might know. And then right now, that's what we have laid out, but we do have a number of entrepreneurship events coming up, which are start a Shopify store. So we can walk you through the process of starting your Shopify store. If you have a business or a product, we have help you just make a business plan. If you have simply a business idea and you don't know how to sort of launch it or how to formulate it in your head, because that is something that can be a challenge when you're like, I know this will make a great business, but how do I get it on paper? How do I prove to others that it will make a great business? And your business plan is required for that. So these are all the workshops that we have. I hope that people will sign up and join. We run them every semester. They're recurring. We add new ones. And I did forget to mention that we have a how to stream on Twitch coming up with an awesome individual named Samuel. He walks you through all the back end of setting up from the very, very beginnings of, starting your Twitch stream to how to run a raid at the end, because we all know that's the most important part about, you will not be liked by the community if you don't raid at the end. It's part of what you need to know. So there's a little tidbit right there. And we have 2 sessions coming up, and we're doubling up. So because it's a pretty popular one. So if you want to get on one of those, follow us on social and you'll hear about it as soon as it pops up. So I've talked a lot about the space. You've seen some of these examples here, but there is one thing I didn't do, which is show you the space and exactly some of the technology that's in it. So we actually, luckily enough, marketing made us this virtual tour of the space in pre-COVID times, and it's come in very useful for showing you guys what it would look like when eventually you do get to come visit us in the space, because that's going to happen very soon, I hope, because I really do miss the space. So here I am, embarrassingly, in the space, messing with VR. I mentioned Masterpiece VR before, and on the screen there is actually me doing a bad job of being a sculptor, because I'm not a great sculptor, but it doesn't stop me from trying, especially when I don't have to pay for clay and it involves, the VR process. So that's where the VR is. As I go around, I'm going to go slow because sometimes it likes to whip around like that. There we go. That worked out okay, but so I want to point out a couple things. There's a table of objects here. Almost all of them are 3D printed. There's a couple in the back that are made of foam, but that's, here nor there. There's a baby Groot on the table. I don't know if you can see that, a little squinty, but there he is. This little guy right here, importantly, and I'll try to zoom in if I can. No, it's not going to work for me. So I'll pull up a larger image of that in a bit. But that was actually designed in VR. So that object right there was sculpted in VR and then exported into a format that could be printed and then printed. So imagine if you could make something in the digital realm and then automatically pull it out into the physical realm and go, wow, and reprint them as many times as you wanted. For a sculptor, that's an incredibly powerful tool. But I will say it's a magical moment, at least for me. It's one of the most magical moments that you can have in life, which is you have an idea, you start working on it, you see its progress on a screen, and then one day you hold it in your hands and you go, wow, this is a tangible thing. I made this. That's so cool. And that happens every day when we're dealing with people in the space. And I love, love, love watching it happen. And I recommend that anyone experience that, at least at some point in their life. I'm sure all of you have, done crafts and things like that. But when you spend a little bit of extra time working through a computer and you see it formulate and then you get to hold it, it's just magic. So another cool example is this helmet in the corner here. Right there, there's a Master Chief ODST helmet, Orbital Dropship Trooper, I believe is what that stands for. But if you've ever played Halo, the video game, you would recognize that helmet. And the crazy part about it is that helmet was exported. So you can go into the video game and you can pull out the root file of the helmet, and then you can print that helmet. So it's not like someone sculpted a version of the helmet. It is literally the helmet that was in the video game that has been pulled out of the video game and made into a real object, which blows my mind still every time I tell anyone. And I just go, wow, that's so cool. If we almost have a replicator, almost, from Star Trek. So here we go as we circle around just the rest of the room. This table is really important eventually when you guys come back, and this wall in the back. So the table means that you talk to other people when you're there, because you're all sitting in a row and you're working on cool projects, but you see somebody across the way and you go, wow, that looks so cool. How did you do that? And then you start to have more of these. And the same thing can happen in workshops, and we try to foster that as much as possible. It is a little harder in the virtual realm, but that is why the tables are like that. And it's a purposeful thing that we like to foster in the space, is this interdisciplinary discussion. So if someone needs help on a project that sent a service request, like I said, if we don't have the answer, sometimes it's hey, didn't a student ask about that a little while ago? We still have their email, right? We'll hook you guys up together to talk about it. And I know that friendships have been born in that exact scenario, even in the virtual world. So it's kind of a cool concept that we still like to bring into virtual. And this idea board, I call it, at the back, so it's a messy scribbles all over, right? When you're inventing things and trying to come up with new ideas, it doesn't matter what they look like on the board. They don't have to be pretty. But this is ideas from the first 2 months of the space. So it's old. They're older ideas. They're 2 years old now at this point. But we leave them there because it's sort of it was a really cool time when everyone was discussing. And anytime you would say, hey, it would be really awesome if, and then, you had this awesome, amazing idea, we'd say, hey, put that on the board, because it's really important that you take your ideas and you put them out there right away. Write them in your notebook, put them down somewhere, because the worst feeling that I have, at least as a songwriter, is when I came up with a good tune in the shower, or I came up with a good tune and then I remember that I had a good idea, but I cannot remember what that good idea was. It's like, oh, it's lost to the ether. I hope it comes back someday. So we always write our ideas down when you're being creative, because then you can come back to them. Even if they become inspiration for new ideas, it's still a very good thing. I'm reading a book all about Leonardo da Vinci, The Life and Times, that my wife got for me. And frankly, Leonardo didn't publish anything, or he published he had 5 paintings his whole life. He's seen as one of the greatest painters of all time. And he literally has 2 unfinished paintings and 5 finished ones. He has books and books and books worth of things, but none of them were ever published. And we didn't find out all of the great things that Da Vinci did until much, much later, hundreds of years later. And all because he just wrote down every one of his thoughts in a notebook. From the time that he was 28 years old to his time of death, he was scribbling in a notebook and making use of that. And so, his entire legacy and the greatness that is known as Leonardo da Vinci literally comes from him taking that to heart and just writing down everything that he can. So we kind of put that down in the space and instill that idea is that, your ideas are valid and you should write them down because it'll help you to get them to the next step. So writing them down is the first step to all of that. So I've gone through, now you know what the space looks like. You've seen a 3D printer. I don't have a laser cutter because this is old, but right where that board is that I was just talking about is where our laser cutter lives now. And any one of those virtual requests and consultations can lead to us cutting something for you. And we can explain to that if you want to. We can book an appointment to be able to help you with that because we can do that remotely. And then 3D printing as well. So we can operate the prints from home, and so we can help you guys with doing that. Just quickly, I would say we have some actual objects that I can give you a closer look at because I have them on my table here behind me at my house, because that's fun. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second here and give you guys a little bit of a better view, I hope. So here's one of them, and I did talk about math and how it was kind of, something that I didn't care enough about. And now I kind of wish I did, because there's this awesome things that you can do with math, which is this object only exists because math can describe it. It's not something, we've been able to make it. It's in 4 dimensions technically. And I would never be able to perceive it with my limited capabilities in math if it was just an equation. And previously, the only other way to make one of these before you had a 3D printer was to have it made out of, basically made out of glass. So you could see everything going on with it inside of it. But if you ever heard of a Mobius strip, and a Mobius strip is something where you can walk around and go to the inside and the outside of an object in 3 dimensions without actually having to transverse across it. So go over, basically go from the X to the Y or the Z to the X. And it is complicated. So, I'll forgive you if it's a hard concept to take on right away. But this one is a 4-dimensional version of that. So you can, if you had gravity boots and, you could just walk through here, or you were on the moon, you could literally follow around this object and go from one side, and then you'd end up going inside the object, and you can't see me right now, coming out to about here, continuing along to here, and then all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I'm back on the outside. So I know that's a little bit of a loop and it's hard to follow, but I promise you that if you could walk around in here, you would go all the way and end up back where you are without ever having turning around a corner, so to speak. And that is something that out of glass would cost $700. I'd never be able to hold this and perceive that without having a 3D printer that could print it for 10 or maybe 15, somewhere in between there. So that's a cool object. We also, have these things like this that people use just for aesthetic purposes, but also if you're running a D&D campaign and things like that, you can have these be, your tower in the corner can help you make your map. We can do D&D figures as well. Steven's been getting into that. Maybe I'll have him show you one later, but you're not limited to the one color that comes off the printer itself. So this would have come off directly off the 3D printer, but this one was painted by one of our techs. So this is literally the same thing, but this one was painted post processing. And yes, Ryan is a particularly good painter, so this looks particularly good because he's good at it. But guess what? You can practice on it. Doesn't cost that much money for the paints, and you can get this good. Ryan ascertains all the time that it's not because he's incredibly talented. It's because he spent some time. And I would, argue that he is incredibly talented, but also I see Steven was able to paint one. I think he has one even. If you have one on your desk,
yeah,
you have.
I could vouch for that. I'm a particularly terrible painter, and after an hour working with Ryan, I got something I actually like owning.
Exactly. So Steven has one too. Oh, I like that movie magic going on. It's cool. So there's also a couple things that printers can do that other sort of ways of manufacturing things can't. So this guy, unfortunately, I lost the legs. So forgive me, little pangolin. I'm sorry. But this is, everyone picks him up and thinks he's an armadillo. But our point is to get the idea across that this is a pangolin and pangolins exist and they are going to go extinct if we don't learn a little bit more about them. So we printed this in the space to be able to say, oh, you can't read it, but it says save the pangolins. So we wanted to, show people that they're, just as a cause, that it was a fun thing to print, but also it's unique in one aspect, which is that it can do this. And that's not necessarily unique, but the point is that it came off the printer as one piece. So the way the printer prints it is by going across and doing an outline of the shape and filling the inside. And then it moves up on the Z axis. I'm learning math. See, I told you guys. It moves up by a 0.1 millimeter, and then it does it all over again and again and again and again until the footprint changes and becomes one object, one solid object, or what looks like one solid object. But it actually made all of the joints on the inside while it was printing. And because it prints in that particular fashion, it's totally, you're able to do this. You would never be able to injection mold an object. You'd have to assemble it afterwards. So it can sort of speed up the process of making things like this, or making things that you could never make before. Objects, if you look online, there are literal objects that could not be made without a very expensive milling machine, and even sometimes just not at all, unless they were made on a 3D printer. And this is sort of one of them. Talked about laser cutting a little bit, and very quickly I wanted to, I challenged, sort of said you could find something in your house that was laser cut. So I haven't shown you what a laser cutter is, but I'll describe it a little bit. It's basically a tube that can project like 100 watt or 40 watt or a very powerful tube, which projects a laser into it, and through mirrors, the laser ends up pointing down onto a surface. That surface burns any design it can cut. It's within an enclosed box, so it is not dangerous. I had somebody ask me previously, is it dangerous to operate the laser? I'm imagining like, a jigsaw and I'm moving this piece while the laser is shooting down. Like, no. The laser is 100% automatic and it moves around. But you'll find things probably in your house that are laser cut or laser etched, for example. So in metal on this random item from my house, a measuring cup, this is a coating that was laser etched away. So it was just a coating on top of the metal. It can't necessarily cut into the metal, so the laser didn't do this part unless they have a very powerful laser, which they might. It's Ricardo, I guess. But that can be created using a laser etcher. This paddle right here, for example, was laser etched. This logo was laser etched onto the paddle. This is for making crepes. So you might have one at your house if you ever made crepes. And then, interestingly, for those of you packaging things, this packaging for my wedding photos was actually laser etched. The rest of it was not cut, but this was lovely. And one thing I want to point out, the reason I know it was laser etched and the reason you guys can know that it was laser etched in the future is that it's darkened in the center here. So the darkening that happens is because it's literally burning the wood. It's, it's tiny, tiny fire. Like you can't even perceive the fire, but that's what's going on. And then the other way to know that it is, and that wasn't just dyed or colored that way, is these really sharp corners on the inside. No other form of manufacturing, maybe stamping, but even then that would be milled. So no other form of manufacturing can get those really clean inside corners other than a laser etcher. So it's a reason to use a laser etcher when a CNC maybe would be faster or that kind of thing. And so those are a bunch of different things. Oh, I forgot. It's on the ground. This one. So Steven actually painted this one too. So if you're impressed with his paint job, I watched him do it too. It was pretty awesome. So Steven, thanks for sharing this with me because I know.
That's actually not painted. So that is a very interesting substance called rub and buff, which is a wax that has metal particles in it. Right. If you want to give something a really quick and easy metal finish, that'll cover anything from wood to plastic to theoretically, you could rub it into metal, but that would just make metal look like metal. But it's a very, very quick and easy thing to work with.
Yeah. So this was interestingly, I forgot it on the hood of the car, and my wife went to go out for an errand to get groceries, and she's like, what is on the car? What's going on? It's like a little strange one. So Stephen, we're lucky. It didn't take off because if she'd taken off, it might have taken off. So I'm glad it didn't.
46
So,
hours to print a new one, Matt.
6 hours? Okay, that's not that bad. But I'd feel
46.
46 hours? Oh my goodness. I thought that was actually rather quick. So it takes time to 3D print. That's something to point out. And then really quickly, I know we're running out of time here. If there are any questions, I know you'll drop them in the chat. So do let me know if there are any. But I want to leave you guys with somewhat of a pretty cool object that I love that Ryan out of the space and Stephen worked on for a year to perfect. And it's something called a lithophane. And I guess the point of this sort of object and showing it to you is that, number one, it looks cool, but there's a whole backstory to it, which is that it involved applied research, it involved innovation. There's an entrepreneurship aspect because it can be seen as a product and it can be sold. There was investigation into patents for it and whether or not that was possible. And it's also led to new ideas growing from it. So it kind of runs the gamut of what something can be with the help of applied research, innovation, and entrepreneurship in all of its forms. So I'll show it to you and then I'll tell a little story about it. So we have this object right here and it doesn't look like much, but you can kind of see that there is this outline of somebody's face a little bit, right? So cool. We 3D printed this, just so you guys know. And these types of objects used to be made out of ceramics, and they'd be carved in 18th century France. So a lithophane is not a new concept. It's an old concept, but 3D printing is a new technology applied to an old concept. And it's not our idea. It's something that Ryan found on the internet, but he and Stephen worked really hard to perfect it on a whole bunch of fronts and turn it into something that basically does this. So if you guys can see, there we go. There we go. Now I get the good light on it. So now you can see that it really does show a very detailed face. Whereas, when it's like this, there's nothing going on. And then the light comes in and it's this beautiful, beautiful rendition. So number one, people saw it as art. They said, wow, that's so cool. Can I get one of my family and my friends? How do you print that? That's really interesting. So it worked to target what you can do with a 3D printer, get people interested in it. Number two, there was research into a whole host of materials. I literally have 30 of these different ones that were done out of silver. We tried to do them out of blue to see if you could do water out of blue, and you can. There's ones that are more yellow in tint. There's ones that are more gray. This one, we've tried to make it look like a pencil sketch. So that particular material is like that, right? Yeah, there you go, Elizabeth. You remember when Ryan showed it? Exactly. He was showing it off in the space. And so all of that was awesome. And Ryan was able to sell some online. So he was, I'm going to start a business, and he did. But one thing that happened out of it is that I was giving a tour much like this, but we were in person, and Ryan I did that exact thing. And everyone in the room was kind of like, oh, cool. But there was one person who just he was like, I don't know, what good is that? It's beautiful, I guess, if you care about that kind of thing. But why? What is this for? What is it doing? And I was like, I don't know. I just like beautiful things. I don't know what else to tell you. It's a beautiful thing that I want to share with all of you. But Ryan saw me sort of in a little bit of a panic, and he ran over and he took this from my hand and he handed it to the individual. He said, hey, feel my picture. And the guy went, okay. And he did. And he's like, cool. So what? He's like, how many times has anyone asked you that before, or asked you to feel their picture? And how many times have you been able to feel a picture before? Probably never, unless you know something we don't know. And in that moment, it became, hey, maybe this has an application for sharing art and photographs and turning them into things that visually impaired people who couldn't see the picture actually look at, right? So now we're investigating what that is. We're investigating, is that possible? Does it help somebody? Is it a good experience for them to feel this? Does it give them more opportunity? So the real point is that an idea grows with the Makerspace through sharing it, through research, through all kinds of avenues. And so your idea particularly could grow in that very same way if you want to engage with us, and we can help you do that, just like we did with this lithophane. So thank you so much, everybody. And thank you to everyone here. And Stephen, thank you very much for engaging with me. And I really, really appreciate you listening to the presentation.
I have a little surprise. Well, I don't know because
You have a surprise? Hey, you got a camera. Hey,
I
that's
did.
awesome. Hey, that's amazing. You made us a paper art. Elizabeth, your paper
Yes,
art is
in
amazing.
the silhouette. I tried yesterday because I'm experimenting with them. I don't get yet the pressure.
Ah, yes, yes, yes.
And in fact, yesterday I cut my
You cut your mat.
plastic mat. Yes,
Well,
that's
these are the
bad.
things. It happens. You know, you can't get down on yourself too much for that kind of thing. Honestly, you can't, because that's how you're learning. You know not to do that anymore. And if we always like to say that as a mantra, if you, and I'm going to say this really lightly, if you fail or you do something that is not exactly what you want, then as long as you learn from it, it was not, right? So just take it like that. Say, okay, well, I learned that. And honestly, it's beautiful and I can't wait. I don't know, we have to get it somehow, or at least take a photo. We'll share it on Instagram. If you share it, I'll make sure that we reshare it, because that's amazing. And I'm glad that you were inspired. That's so nice. And I really, really appreciate that.
I have to do one for Makerspace.
Hey, I like that. And I think you chose, and it might even be Gotham font. I'm not sure, but if it looks like it might be. So good job. Your eye as a graphic designer is proven there. So I really, really appreciate that. That's amazing. That's so cool. And you did that just last night, right? Like in a few hours. So
Yes, it's simple. The machine is really quickly.
really quick. Yeah, it does it so quick. So I'm sure that's a great point, that doing it not by hand, you were able to, it's the same thing as the lithophane. Everyone was doing these by hand in the 18th century. And they probably got commissioned by the royalty to do them. It took them months and months and months to do one. And now we're like, okay, well, we can print one in a few hours if you'd like. So now you're taking that on with the paper cutting. That's awesome. Really, really cool. I can't wait till we're back on campus and you're starting your new program. It's going to be amazing.
Yes, I can't wait to.
So if there's no other questions or anything, then I'm absolutely happy to have had everybody here. And I really do appreciate, especially Elizabeth, that's an awesome gift and a great way to end the presentation. So I really, really appreciate that. That's amazing.